Another edition of Celtics Roundtable on CLNS Media coming at you right now. Celtics Roundtable is powered by CLNS Media, the leading online provider of audio-video coverage of the Boston Celtics. Coming at you here on a Wednesday after what was one of the crazier days we've probably experienced in NBA history. It was an insane day of rumors, everything flying around. Trying to make sense of all of it has gotten a lot of control, and even with not regards to the Celtics, you had the Hawks and the Hornets making a trade. Of course, the Nets getting stuff from the Lakers, which impacts the Celtics twice. All this fun stuff. But we want to just focus on Celtics stuff right here on CLNS Roundtable. Myself, Evan Valenti, alongside Matt Ignal, joined by one of the best guys you can find covering the draft anywhere. I don't care what outlet it is. It's Cole Zwicker. He's a contributor for the Step Back and the What's on Draft Pod. Just released his big board on capstrategist.com. And Cole, the big trade that Boston made, trading back from 1 to 3 to give up the opportunity to have Markelle Fultz to drop back 2 spots. Danny said that the guy they would have picked at 1, they can now pick at 3, supposedly, right? So my question for you is, as we get into this thing, everybody's talked about Danny's 1 and 3, the gap between those two not being that big. Is the gap between 1 and 3 on your draft board, is it bigger than we expected? Is it smaller? Is it closer than we expected? Where are you at between 1 and 3? Does it make this pick swap make sense?
It's definitely a big. I think that Markelle has the high ceiling, high floor, primary equity that you don't find often in drafts. I do think there's a little bit of a drop off. I actually have Dennis Smith number 2, a high variance guy. He's definitely has a lower floor as far as more risk. Lonzo Ball at 3. And Josh Jackson and Jayson Tatum were 6 and 7. And that's not a conventional take. A lot of the main draft sites and the league executives, if you talk to them, it's kind of a 4-player draft as far as Fultz 1 for most guys in a separate tier. But then that second tier being Ball, Jackson, and Tatum. So I know a lot of guys think that Fultz isn't the clear runaway number 1 pick. And I think that makes some sense because he's not a generational kind of franchise caliber. He's not Kevin Durant, Anthony Davis type, but he's a really solid number 1. So usually you see number 1 picks return the greatest value for a franchise. Historically, that's where you get the elite level talent. I do think that Fultz is really solid, but you can make a case that this is not like an overarching divide in this class between 1 and 3, but I still do think that Markelle is ahead of the class.
So, I mean, when we try to, we're all still trying to figure out, what is Danny Ainge's plan? And I think most people have sort of linked the Celtics. Jayson Tatum came in for a workout. The Celtics are still trying to get Josh Jackson. Like you said, I think you, as I saw on your big board, you said Jayson Tatum's going to be 7th, Josh Jackson 6th on your big board. You're a little bit lower on these guys. I just kind of want to get your take on them. Why do you feel that you're a little bit lower than most other experts, executives?
I'll start with Josh. I just think the idea of him is better than the reality. People think that he's an Iguodala type player as far as defensively. He just doesn't have that requisite core strength. He's not very strong. He has that slender frame. He doesn't have the great length that you see for a lot of these perimeter defenders with 6'10" wingspan. And he's not great laterally. He's really good, but he's not elite. So if you look and parse through the subtleties of his game, there's just not that elite ceiling to me as far as a primary kind of wing creator, a primary scorer. He's not very fluid shooting off the dribble. We already know about the catch and shoot issues as far as extending to 3. I think his shot is a lot farther away than a lot of people think as far as he might not ever even shoot league average. And if he's a secondary ball handler, and I really like his feel for the game, he's a good passer. He can dribble well enough. But there's a ceiling for those kinds of players that aren't go-to scorers on the wing and they can't space the floor because that's what you need to do if you're an off-ball player for the most part. So I think there's more negatives in his game that he gets credit for. Jayson Tatum is really hard for me because he's more skilled than a lot of players. He's compared to I think he's more skilled and polished as a scorer coming out as a Harrison Barnes, but he's not as skilled as a primary wing scorer option that you see a Carmelo Anthony. If you watch Carmelo in college, the fluidity he has with the ball on pull-up jumpers, just as a self-creator, it just looks different on film. Tatum has a more rough around the edges game. I mean, he makes it look smooth, but his shot is a 2-motion shot. It doesn't really project a lot of confidence. He's never shot well from 3, even in high school. So extending range isn't a guarantee. But for him, it's all going to be about degree, right? How well he can create, how efficient he is as a scorer, because that's what he is. He's a scorer with decent ancillary skills. He can pass a little bit. He can defend okay in non-liability fashion. But when you look at him, his archetype is he's supposed to be a primary wing scorer, and if he can't do that efficiently, he's going to take enough off the table by not bringing value in other areas that he might not be that valuable.
I have a question, because we basically spent our last podcast.
Yeah, we've been killing this topic, and again, there's no agreement anywhere, and it's causing some dissension, and it's causing some ugliness, and it's people on YouTube are killing us. Like, it's unbelievable the amount of kickback we have amongst our own group and then people outside of our group. It's like it's crazy.
People fell in love with JAYSON Tatum, I think, at the workout yesterday. Like, Celtics fans have just been like trying to talk themselves in to one of these guys. And, we took a hard look at JAYSON Tatum, just like the Celtics took a hard look at Markelle Fultz and said no. We were just like, how is this guy going to be? He's a scorer, right? But is he going to be this hyper-efficient scorer that NBA offenses are trending towards? And if he's not that, then he's maybe not bringing so much value elsewhere. And then you talk about Josh Jackson, what he shoot, like 57% from the free throw line? That's a pretty big red flag right there. And I'm still just having trouble wrapping my brain around how Danny Ainge and Mike Zarin and company could look at these two prospects and say, these guys are just about as good as Markelle Fultz. I just can't get there.
I'm with you. I think that there's a lot of justification for that. I mean, I hate to pile on, but your arguments make sense. And I think it was more honestly about acquiring an additional asset to include in a trade. I mean, Boston already holds all the cards anyway as far as these premier trades go, like for Jimmy Butler or Paul George. Number one was the best asset on the board, so they can afford to move down to 3 and still have the best assets on the board and maybe acquire an additional pick to include. So I think that was a lot of the initiative behind it, but absolutely correct on your assessments, in my opinion.
The best version of Jackson is a guy that can shoot the ball. And my problem with Jackson's shot, there's A, a lot of moving parts, and B, even as there are a lot of moving parts, it's flat. And, a lot of times those flat shots result in a lot of bricks and a lot of long rebounds. And, yeah, maybe the long rebounding will work, but you don't want to count on that. Like, I like the way Jackson does everything else, though. I think he can put the ball on the floor. I don't think he has enough moves, like in isolation scoring, that Tatum has. Like, Tatum has all these fancy moves with the feet and able to generate some space. Jackson doesn't have that. He relies more on athleticism to create space. He's got a good head on his shoulders, I think, in terms of like a ball handler. I agree, like he's not a primary ball handler right now, but I think it's a guy that can help facilitate an offense in spurts. That's not a bad thing. But you just go back to that jump shot, and it doesn't look pretty. The guys in the NBA have been able to succeed with not pretty jump shots, and I'm on the part that I don't think this one is really correctable. Am I weird on that?
No, I think there's a lot of credence to that. I mean, he did show signs later in the season as far as ironing out that really bad hitch. He didn't have that complete hesitation in his shot. He shot more NBA threes or like close to NBA threes off the catch, like on the hop, showing better rhythm tendencies there. So I think there were some positive. I know people quote all the time that he was like, I think maybe over 40% during a certain stint of games or something like that, and that's like highly quoted. I think that's a farce. I wouldn't look at that. But with Jackson, I would love him if he could play the 4 consistently. I think that he has like that big space kind of playmaking game. If he had a bigger frame, I think he can get him in space, kind of like the Magic should use Aaron Gordon, kind of like that. Yeah. But he just doesn't. He doesn't have that frame. Like he doesn't have the length either at the NBA level. He's also caught between positions because you don't want to play him. I mean, he's skilled enough, of course, to play on the perimeter, but nobody's really going to guard him, and he needs that kind of first step or that momentum as far as people closing out to him hard to get that first step advantage on the move. And I don't know if teams are going to close out hard to him. I mean, everybody's probably going to help off him and then kind of close out short. And Boston has a lot of defensive players, of course. That's what they're known for as far as that physical mindset, that two-way play. But you can only get away with so many of the same archetype. It just doesn't – you can't build around a bunch of guys that can't shoot. It won't work. I mean, you'll be able to defend well. You won't be able to shoot well enough. You have to have a better balance. And I just think Jackson compounds the issues a lot there.
Yeah, I mean, you think about, like, Josh Jackson, he's all like he actually reminds me a little bit of Marcus Smart. Like if you just added a few inches, maybe subtracted some of that muscle. This hyper competitive guy. He's a better athlete too. But yeah, I mean, I think Alex Cugg was actually going to be on the podcast tomorrow. Celtics blog, Alex Cugg. He was thinking that like Josh Jackson might be like a guy that like you would just hide Isaiah Thomas on. He might be that player, and that's a little bit scary. So I think you're right on the money here. I can't believe that they traded Markelle Fultz, and I'm just sort of coming to the realization that they're probably going to draft one of these guys. I mean, at least that's what all the buzz is right now. If you had to guess, Cole, is it Tatum? Is it Jackson? Is there a wild card in there? Could it possibly be Isaac? That's the guy I want at 3. What are your thoughts? Who should the Celtics draft? Who do you think they will draft?
Okay, who should they draft? I think they should draft Dennis Smith Jr. I think that he's the most talented player at that position. I would go Isaac after that. I have Isaac ahead of both Josh and Tatum. But I think they will go Tatum. That's just the lean I have. I don't know. I think Josh fits that hard-nosed personality better, but it seems to be the buzz surrounding Tatum there. You can make a conceptual fit argument that's better with Tatum paired next to Jaylen Brown, who's the better athlete, he's probably going to check the more athletic wings. I think you can see a better case. But again, if they take Jackson, I think you have to start thinking like a trade alert has to start going on in your mind, because I think that he might be the most coveted pick for teams in that range. Say they move down another 3 spots. Orlando apparently likes Josh a lot. So if they take Josh, I would start looking at that as a trade indicator. But if they keep the pick, I would lean Tatum. So do you guys think they move the pick?
I like Tatum, but I don't love him. I think people are attacking, now that we have more time to attack what he's bad at. You're not focusing on what he's good at. But I just couldn't justify picking him at 3 when the ceiling of Jackson is, I think, higher, and the ceiling of Isaac, I think, is higher.
I have no idea what they're going to do.
Tatum's a good player.
Upside down, so nothing is real anymore. I mean, we thought this was going to be a boring draft. Like, we were going to have you on to talk second round guys, talk about the Celtics pick in the second round, and man, that no one even cares.
We haven't even touched on that. Before we continue, I just want to tell you guys about HelloFresh, the meal kit delivery service that makes cooking more fun so you can focus on the whole experience, not just the final plate. Each week, HelloFresh creates new delicious recipes with step-by-step instructions designed to take around 30 minutes. HelloFresh sources the freshest ingredients measured to the exact quantities needed, so there's no food waste, and they employ 2 full-time registered dietitians on staff who review each recipe to ensure it is nutritionally balanced. They deliver your food to your doorstep in a recyclable, insulated box for free. And now they're offering light spring meals and have just introduced breakfast options, the most important meal of the day. Loyal listeners of this show get a very special offer because you're a listener to this news feed and this podcast. Use the promo code BEAT30 for $30 off your first week of HelloFresh. Again, support the Celtics Roundtable and try HelloFresh for free simply by trying HelloFresh.com and enter the promo code BEAT30. So Dennis Smith Jr., So Boston. Let me get your thoughts on this real quick. Boston trades the ability to take Markelle Fultz, who's the most polished guard in the draft, and you think they're going to take? It would be best suited for them not to take Markelle, trade back and take Dennis Smith. That's enough value there to make that pick justifiable.
I feel like they actually they must have passed on Markelle for some reason. I feel like it's the intangibles, and that is a weakness of Dennis Smith. I can't see it in a million years.
Oh, I can't see it either. 0% chance it's going to happen. That's what I would do in a vacuum as far as the best player on the board, in my opinion. But okay. No, there's no freaking way they take Dennis Smith. I mean, he doesn't fit the culture. I mean, if they were complaining about Markelle's win-loss record and his intangibles on the court, Markelle's a total introvert and no issues at all, they're not taking Dennis Smith. I think that his off the field or off the court stuff is a little overblown as far as he's a good kid. He's just he's kind of a dick to his teammates, and the body language. The body language last year was really bad and stuff like that. He's not a Celtics guy.
Yeah. Okay. So let's settle on Isaac then. Jonathan Isaac's a guy that one of our co-hosts and one of our panelists loves a lot and has been on him the entire season. And I find Isaac attractive because I think out of all the guys that you could possibly draft, if you're looking for that quote-unquote unicorn, right, he has the best ability to become the unicorn. Everybody talks about years later, of course we didn't take this 7-foot guy who can shoot threes, block shots, rebound, rim run, do all those things. And he's the least polished. But, again, the upside there, I think, is through the charts.
Defensively is where it starts. He is just a multi-level defender. Rarely guys come around like him as far as being able to switch out and sink in a stance like he does on the perimeter for a 7-footer. He can protect the rim. Really rare prospect in that regard. I'm a little less sold on the shooting. I think that might come in time with strength acquisition. He can't shoot NBA threes right now consistently. It's mostly short on attempts there. His creation game, I'm glad you guys didn't touch on that too much because I think that concept with him is a little overrated as far as people view him as some kind of primary wing scorer at times, and I don't think he's that guy. I mean, he has a little bit of juice off the bounce, but the ball slows him down. He's not going to get separation. He's not strong enough to really demand the ball in the mid post and score out of those spots. But if you view him as a 4 and then with strength addition, he can swing over to a small ball 5 in the future when the league downsizes in the playoffs. He's the best defensive player in the draft. Overall, he's like kind of that chaos creator who can play the 4, protect the rim, switch on the perimeter, and that would be a better Boston pick for me, in my opinion, as far as he gives them more diversity. They need a little bit of rim protection. He's a high-level rebounder for his frame. Like, he really tries. He's physical, despite not being, having a great build. So I like Isaac a lot. I would like him there. For me, that's a nice culture pick for them too.
That's going to do it for this edition of Celtics Roundtable on the Celtics news feed and on CLNS Media and on YouTube. We're available on your favorite podcast app. You can download our app on the CLNS Radio mobile app for both Android and iPhone. You can find us on Stitcher and in iTunes. If you're watching us on YouTube, hello. Hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. If you're watching us, you can follow us on Twitter at CLNS Roundtable. Give us a 5-star review on iTunes if you love it. We'll have more guests on this weekend. It's going to be a jam-packed week. The draft's on Thursday. You'll hear from us all the time. I want to thank Cole Zwicker for joining us here today.
Cole, yeah. I listened to the first What's on Draft Pod, so I've been a fan for a while. I just want to thank you for doing that.
Yeah,
and
man.
Obviously,
Thanks a lot.
I just appreciate your in-depth scouting, and I love the podcast, and it's just made me a better basketball fan. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
I really appreciate that, man. Sorry for the quality of the podcast in the beginning, especially. Jesus. So
hey, we feel you on that. All right.
Thanks.
All right. Cole, thanks a lot, man. We'll talk soon.